I think, the pressing thing for all of us is this market, right? I don't think anyone could have scripted how this thing has gone down. And I certainly don't want to get into any type of politics, but I do think we all need to be acutely aware of what the results of this election means. And we need to be able to intelligently set expectations for both our client referral partners and our end user clients who are actually getting loans from us. And the one thing I do think that we can expect is a lot of volatility, a lot of uncertainty. And if I'm a microcosm of what's going on, I'm sure you guys are getting a lot of the same questions that I'm getting from clients. The question sounds something like, hey, the election's coming. I really want to get locked before the election's coming. I had a few calls, frantic calls, just riddled with fear around, what was going to happen pre-election, making sure that they were locked in. A lot of calls just asking for advice on what I thought was going to happen with, with interest rates and the market post-election. And so that's kind of what the calls sounded like to me from my clients who are getting and receiving loans. On the referral partner side, my real estate agents are starting to have issues with appraisals. Hey, Mark, are you guys seeing appraisal issues happening? Which just tells me that we need to be a little bit more ahead of the game, especially myself. I don't like calls like that when I can help it. I want to be out ahead of that, helping to form and make the message for my referral partners, right? And so I think we all know this is a super low rate environment. And there's, at least here in my market, which is, West Coast, I'm in the San Diego market, and there is literally no inventory, bidding wars on every property. So here you have a rate environment that is extremely low and some could argue still going lower while there's literally no supply. So, I'm not a smart man, but basic economics says if you're making housing more affordable and there's less of it, boy, are you going to have a very rapid increase in values. And so if you're having that rapid increase in values, you're gonna start to have appraisal issues. And Danny, one of the things that I think is such a huge misconception amongst our industry for sure, but also really amongst our referral partners, mainly real estate agents and clients too, is how difficult it is to back up a value in a condo complex. For example, let's say a $500,000 condo just sold and a model match goes a week later for $550,000. For an appraiser to come in and put that 10% gain in an appraisal and back it up on paper in a report is so much more difficult than I think most of us give credit for. And yet it doesn't make sense because even though that new condo went for $550,000, there's 15 offers on it. So certainly the price is there because the market is telling us that there's a price, but therein lies the problem, right? What are your thoughts around that, Danny?
Yeah, I think what this comes down to, Mark, and this is a strategy that for those of you who are watching, this is something that you should absolutely take into your business. Many of you may already be doing this, but I think if Mark's having challenges with it at the level he's operating, then there's probably some of you out there that are experiencing this similar issue. This all comes down to expectation setting. So if the appraisal comes back at 525, in the example that you just gave, and everybody's freaking out because that's the first time that they've ever even considered the possibility that they might have quote unquote overpaid for that property, right? That if that's the first time it happens, you're going to have to unpack all of these natural emotions that come up on all sides. If you've already run the race with your clients in their mind, right? And you've said, look, we have this journey together and we're going to run this race. And at mile marker 23, you're going to start feeling pain. And here's what it looks like. Here's how we're going to overcome that, right? Back that up into this specific example. If you've already run the race with them and said, look, here's what could happen, right? In this market, most of the time, the appraisals come back at value, and what you'll be surprised by is it comes back to the value at the penny. Yes, that is something that I get a lot of questions about because does the appraiser know what we paid for the house? Yes, they do. They see your purchase contract. Most of the time it comes back at value because that's the truest definition of what that home's worth. You know, what two non-distressed parties agree upon. However, there are these technical limitations that we're starting to bump into in what's called bracketing, or how, depending on how technical you want to get with your clients, you explain to them that there's guardrails, technical guardrails that have to be followed in the appraisal process. And you've seen a higher frequency of properties coming in undervalued because of those technical limitations, not because the home is not worth that, because 15 other people said it was, right? And that's supply demand, as you alluded to. So if you prepare them for the possibility of a 510 appraisal or a 505 appraisal, when they get the 525 appraisal in, now you can have that, you know, remember we talked about this, it could go anywhere from 550 to 505. We landed somewhere in the middle and we said this is what we were going to do if that happened. So you're not having to deal with the emotion, because now instead of you being on the side of potentially the person that put them in pain, right? Because now they're worried. Nobody wants to ever feel like they're making a stupid choice, right? Like I'll speak for myself. I never want to make bad calls, right? And overpaying for a house is something that can emotionally feel like it's, you know, it's not a good decision to make, right? That it might be embarrassing to have overpaid or whatever you want to describe it as. But if you position it in advance, now not only are you not on the side of the party putting them into that confusion and pain, you now have positioned yourself as being someone with a lot of foresight and a lot of expertise, being able to actually anticipate all these possible outcomes, and you've anchored into an even worse outcome that you were truly expecting. So now you have maneuvering room instead of being just jammed into a corner, having a number of emotional parties trying to negotiate around what the price actually should be at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I could not agree with you more. I'm actually going to call an audible here. I don't know if this is actually going to work, but I want to share my screen for a second for the purposes of just demonstrating a couple of different things, if I can. And let me just pull this up here.
Everyone watching, this is an untested technical skill that we're just learning right now. So let's see if we can make it happen.
Okay, I'm gonna just try to call an audible. I did this in a meeting yesterday, and a bunch of people found it helpful. Let's see here. Can you guys see my email template here, Danny?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so two things.
It's hard to read it, but actually, why don't you describe what you're going to share? It's difficult to read, but for anybody watching, if you put in chat that you're interested in receiving this email template that Mark's going to share, if it's difficult for you to read, then we'll make sure we get that over to you.
First thing for Outlook users, if you just hover right here, this is my signature. Even if you can't read it, I'm just hovering my mouse, and then I come out to the right of my email signature and I right click. All my signatures are right there, and I've got one right here for low appraisal, and it has a whole strategy around appraisals and what happens if it comes in low. What strategy can you deploy? So for those of you who might not be as thought out and as masterful as Danny just laid out, if you are interested in this, it's just anything that's repeatable, I try to put into a signature like this so that it's easy to share. And I'm just stop sharing my screen now. And if you're interested in either that strategy or just quickly learning how to drop down a signature like that, two things here. One, it saved me a ton of time. But two, if you just want to collaborate a little bit and have some structure around this, Danny laid out something that's very good, but I don't want to be remiss in just thinking that you all have this strategy laid out. It may seem second nature to somebody who's as amazing at strategy as Danny is, but if you need help around that, we're certainly willing to share that with you, or at least I'm willing to share that with you. And so, yeah, so expanding on that a little further, I think if today you did nothing but pick up the phone and call your 10 most influential realtors and just say, hey, Danny, it's Mark over at Caliber Home Loans. Listen, man, what I'm starting to notice is that because rates are so low, it's making housing really affordable. And because there's no houses on the market, it's really driving up the price of the houses that are on the market. So what we're starting to see is that values are increasing so fast that it's impossible for appraisers to keep up. So two things I want you to know is, one, when you have a buyer, you need to set the expectation with them that appraisals are challenging right now because the market is so insatiable. Number two, if you're on the listing side of a transaction, it's really something you want to vet out to make sure that that buyer, if there's an issue on the appraisal, the lender is going to take the loan based on the lower of the purchase price of the appraised value. And so you want to make sure that they've got cash to bridge that gap. And it's just something that you want to sniff out. And if you need any help, I'm happy, to take a look at those deals on the ones that you really want to take, and just make sure that it makes sense. But I wanted to make you aware of it because I think, Danny, if you and I can get ahead of this thing and we can craft a message rather than be reactionary to it, people are really going to look to you as someone who knows exactly what's going on in the real estate market. And I just think it's good to have this message down as the real estate community. You're a big player in the real estate community here. And I just want to make sure, we're on the same page. Do you have any ideas about this? What are you seeing? Right? And then that opens up an opportunity for you to then talk. But I think if you can today pick up the phone, have 10 conversations like that with real estate agents in your market, and you're not asking them to go to coffee so that you can tell them how great you are. You're not asking them for a shot at their deal. You're simply just trying to add value. And I think if you can make these little calls and prospect in a time when none of us have time to prospect with value adds, first of all, no one's doing that. Second of all, it creates this collaboration, this bond that's really, really sticky. And lastly, it just makes really good sense, to your point, Danny, of setting the expectation. You not only need to do that with your loan clients, but you need to do it with your referral partners too.
Absolutely. And last thing that we'll say on this topic, so that we can make sure we cover everything that we had on the agenda, is that, it's really important right now for you as the mortgage professional, financial services professional in the lives of your clients and referral partners to be positioned as the expert and to prepare them with the information they need to make good decisions. So I put this note here, we put this note here: a confused mind will not act. This is the way that you can add absolutely the most value to certainly your referral partners' businesses, but also to the families that you're serving, is to educate them and provide the value of education so that they can be empowered to act. So another strategy as it relates to, one is this expectation setting, pre-framing and preparing. But then once you do get into a situation, using tools like, when I was originating in my business, I used tools like Mortgage Coach, or you can also use tools like MBS Highway or others that would give you the ability to then translate for that family. Okay, here's what happens, right? Here's what happens if you back out and wait, 3-4 months for things to settle down, but interest rates go up 0.5%. So yeah, maybe you end up with a purchase price that's, let's say, in some fantasy world, values actually go backwards and actually go down, and you were able to get a lower purchase price, but at the same time, interest rates went up. And that was actually one of the things that drove prices to go down. It was a related event. Well, you can show, using tools, best-in-class tools out there in the marketplace, you can show your clients what that actually means for them. And I haven't done the math ahead of time here, but I'm willing to bet, any referral partner coffee that if I show somebody going $10,000 lower in purchase price, but 0.5% higher in interest rate, they're going to end up paying more for that house over time, because their monthly payment, which is really what matters to them, which is why we're talking about this explosive value market and reduced inventory, is because people make decisions based on payment, and with rates low, the payments that people can afford for various price points have actually, or the price point that they can afford has gone up, and that's what's causing them to be in a position to make those very aggressive offers, which are driving prices up. So using those tools, showing what they are, because a confused mind will not act. And the greatest thing you can contribute to your referral partner's business is more qualified buyers that are willing to move quickly on their path towards home ownership.
One other thing I want to touch on, I know you said last thing before we move on, Danny, but I think it's really important. And that is, if you're talking to a client about a possible appraisal shortage and they're already anxious out of their mind, especially if it's a first-time home buyer, you do not want to create more fear and anxiety. So what Danny was just saying is this gives you an opportunity to educate, to be the local area expert, right? So when you're scripting that, let me offer a possible suggestion. It might sound something like, look, Danny, because there's so few houses on the market and values are absolutely exploding, everyone wants into the market. And because of that, sometimes we're having challenges with appraisals. Like, this house is testing a new high that the one right before it couldn't test. And most of our clients really want to get in because they want a piece of that explosive home gain. And I can't guarantee that that's going to happen, but even if your appraisal comes in short and you have to close the gap of $20,000 on this, $550,000 home. Right now, San Diego is typically at 5%. Right now, they're forecasting 8%. 8% on $500,000 is more than this $20,000 shortage. So if you believe and if you want a part of that equity gain, which is what so many people want, the important part is to get in. What I want to make you aware of is that appraisal challenges can happen, and I don't want it to be a surprise. I want it to be something that we're prepared for. Let's talk about strategies just in case it comes up. So now you're not throwing it out there like, oh, there's an appraisal challenge and leaving them with all this anxiety, right? You're saying the reason there's an appraisal challenge is because values are skyrocketing. And if you want to be a part of that, great. It's just a different way to frame that so that it creates excitement around the home buying process, especially if they believe that values are going to continue to increase because of low rates and shortage of inventory.